The Radio Wemo Breakfast.
Kiwi.
I've got blonde hair, blue eyes. Got too many pimples on my face. I was 15 when I fell pregnant with Rebecca. I had no one come visit me.
I sort of change when I go out with my friends. I act more stupid, you could say.
I left school when I would have been 15 going on 16.
This is my husband-to-be.
You're not going to come back, are you?
That there is a documentary screening at the New Zealand International Film Festival called Love, Lust and Lies. It is the latest, and in fact is in a series of documentaries put together by Gillian Armstrong that follows the lives of Josie, Diane and Kerry. Originally back in 1974 is when Gillian first caught up with these ladies, and now they are 47. They were 14 back then, or around the age of 14, now 47. Love, Lust and Lies is the latest in this series, and Gillian Armstrong is my guest on the show this morning. Hello to you, Gillian.
Hi, how are you?
Very, very well. And yourself?
Good.
Good. Can you take us back to 1974, where it all started? And I know the documentary does do this at the beginning. It kind of gives everyone a sort of a recap if they haven't seen the previous documentaries.
Yes, well, actually, yes, there's 5 of them, and for people who worried that this one won't make sense, we have put the highlights of all the others, because, I mean, I felt, that to go back when they're 47, it doesn't mean... I realise that there's a whole new audience out there who haven't seen the other ones.
Yeah.
So we've made it so that you'll get an understanding of them. Basically, it was really my first paid job as a director. I went to South Australia to make a 20-minute film, it was meant to be, about what it was like to be a 14-year-old girl. And it was called Smokes and Lollies, the first one. And then after that, I thought they talked in that film so much about 18. That was the ideal age to be. And I thought, gee, it would be interesting to go back. And I have to say, at this point, don't forget this is 30 years ago, people weren't doing that sort of return and so on. And 7-Up had started in England, but I knew nothing about it. It hadn't been released in Australia.
Right.
So it was really just this thing. I thought I'd do like one follow-up, and of course the minute I went back to film them when they were 18, I realised how amazing it was that I'd caught people growing up.
And how did you go about selecting Josie, Diane and Kerry?
In the beginning, was actually the brief was really quite open. I could have chosen girls from any walk of life, and there was a researcher who'd started and had a huge file of girls from private schools and hippies kids and so on. But it just so happened that very first night that I was in town, she was going to a drop-in centre where she said she believed there were kids of that age. And I asked if I wanted to come with her. And so I tromped along, and we turned up to, it was an inner city area, a big church hall, and we went in, and there were something like 40 Greek and Italian boys racing around having a wild time, and amongst them were 3 Australian girls, Kerry, Josie and Diana. Obviously the Greek and Italian girls weren't allowed to go, and they came up to me because they actually thought, because I looked so young, that I was coming to join, and they thought the researcher was my mother.
If you don't mind me asking, how old were you at the time?
I think it was actually 76, and I was about 24. So my math's terrible. I'm 57 now, and it was 33 years ago, so work that out.
And so them at their age, that will really, that was not that long ago for you, really, at that time either. Them being 14 and...
I'm sort of like 10 years older than them, so, yeah.
I mean, the memories of that time and feeling like a teenager are still pretty fresh.
Oh, yeah, no, I think that's why the producer chose me, because I think she felt that I'm being such a young director, I would have a good connection with teenagers, because, I wasn't all that far out of it myself.
Yeah. And so you say, you didn't have any idea that this would end up being a rolling kind of documentary, that you'd end up making 5 of them about this group of girls.
No, I mean, almost at every stage. I mean, I have to say, as soon as I'd cut 14-year-old footage with the 18-year-old stuff, I realised it was how special it was. And also, I have to say, these 3 girls ended up doing a lot of living. I mean, they had, a lot of stories, a lot of things that happened just between 14 and 18. So, so it had wonderful material. But but I knew then I had to come back, and I thought I'll come back when they're maybe 25. It turned out I was shooting a feature film that year, so I came back when they're 26. But the last one that I did, which was called Oh No, Not 14 Again, they, two of them had teenage daughters round about the age they were when I began, and to me that seemed to be the perfect end because it sort of went in a circle. I can't, and even then, at the end of that film, they actually turn on me. I appear at a dinner with them on camera.
Yeah.
And they say, "Are you going to come back and do another one?" And I said, "Oh well," because by then we had new characters. We had their daughters as well. And I said, "Well, I am interested to find out what's going to happen to your daughters." And but I said, and actually, the thing that I thought 10 years from now is so far away, and I'll probably be so old. I probably won't even be able to walk around or crawl around as you do with making documentaries.
It's hard to think that far in the future, isn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that's fascinating. It's really a story, even though it's, a unique portrait of three women, and then in the end, they're the three of the daughters whose stories we follow. But it's a story about all of us growing up. I mean, you see the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and it really is a story about time and change. And
but that is true. I mean, that's a story about all of us. But people who probably aren't familiar with this, with these girls and with these series of documentaries, you think, well, how can you make a series of what really are ordinary lives interesting on the big screen?
No, and that's the thing that's been fantastic. Well, I mean, I think all the way along, because they were very alive, and they've right from the beginning were really committed to being open and honest. I think that people have forgotten what real people are like, because there's a certain sort of personality that's turned up on reality TV in the last 10 years or so.
And it's manufactured reality, isn't it?
It is. And often also there's a certain personality type that wants to go on those shows. There's something that's really interesting. I've realised it's connected with people this time around, and I think it says there's a humble quality, apart from the fact that they are, funny and very self-aware. But the other thing has been, I've really been amazed at how people from all walks of life and ages, 30-year-old single men have been affected by this story, because I think it is about hopes and dreams and what happens with hopes and dreams.
Yeah, and that's what I want to finally talk about is the fact that you've had the ability to check in with these ladies and document their lives and give snapshots, and you're able to give some kind of perspective of where they've come from and where they are now, and perhaps even also where they're going as well. Are there points where with this knowledge that you have, you want to sort of wag your finger and go, "Look, don't do that. I can see where you're heading with this, or I can see where you've been and you're making that same mistake, or this is what you should be doing with your life." Do you ever feel like that?
Well, you do, because I think it's quite obvious that I've become very close to them. I mean, they're like relatives now because I've known them for over 30 years. But you have that dilemma as a documentary filmmaker. You're not meant to. It's meant to be I'm meant to be capturing their lives for an audience. But I have to say, especially at the end of this one of the girls, we won't give away the story, but one of the girls, we all feel that the others do as I do, that she's entering dangerous territory in her life, and we all did try to say something. But as a fact, the joke is, of course, Josie has actually now done counselling courses, and so when I put in my amateur way of trying to advise one of them, she cut in on me and said, no, she's got to work this out for herself, something. So yes, we're all counselling now.
Isn't it funny that we all end up also being older versions of our 14-year-old self? We're still essentially that same person, just maybe a little bit wiser, hopefully, but generally it's the same person inside.
Yeah, and I think that's probably true. Yep. And that for me as a filmmaker was one of the questions that became key to it, is what is it that makes us what we are? Yeah. And whether or not it's genetic or it is learned. Yes.
It's very interesting.
Is it luck or fate, or is it our education and socioeconomic background, and can you break out of it and change? And all those things, I think, come through.
Well, Gillian, I really do recommend that people go and check this this documentary out. It is called Love, Lust and Lies. It is screening at the New Zealand International Film Festival.
2 screenings tomorrow night. I'll be there with Q&A afterwards.
That's in Auckland.
And then there's another screening on Friday afternoon.
That's Auckland City at the Sky City Theatre Thursday and Friday. And check out also nzff.co.nz for other dates around the country as well. Gillian Armstrong, thanks so much.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing my audience.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah, thanks.
Time now here on Kiwi is 9.